talk about Sylvester McCoy not having a Big Finish story for about a year and a half now, and we really, really miss his absence. But one Doctor Who has been basically consistently giving us output for nearly a decade now, for over a decade, I think, is the fourth Doctor, is Tom Baker, who now has more seasons of Big Finish by quite a wide margin than he did on TV. We reviewed earlier on this year the Series 11 Part 1 box set, Solo, which was released back in March, which gave us a bunch of stories here, one of which is basically just an unashamed remake of The Deadly Assassin, but just not very interesting. And we also have another Philip Hinchcliffe homage, which is fine, but nothing really to write home about. Honestly, I thought that Solo was quite a disappointing story, all things considered. It was quite a disappointing box set, all things considered. So now we have Series 11 Part 2, The Nine. And if you recognise that sort of numbered naming for a villain, that's because the 9 is the precursor to the 11, which is a Time Lord, a renegade Time Lord villain who has been in the Doom Coalition and many other box sets as well, with multiple personality disorder, basically. Every time they regenerate, that new personality stays inside the mind, and the 9 is the 9th regeneration of this Time Lord, and they have 9 personalities in their brain. They're also a massive kleptomaniac. So this box set, I should say, gives us 3 stories. We've got The Dreams of Avarice by Guy Adams, we've got Shell Shock by Simon Barnard and Paul Morris, and we also have Peak Season by Elizabeth Miles. Now, Peak Season is a 2-part story that I believe is only available as part of this box set. You can buy The Dreams of Avarice and Shell Shock on their own. Peak Season, for whatever reason, even though it's just a 2-part story, is you need to get the full box set for it. So my pitch for this basically is it worth picking any of these up individually, or is it worth getting the box set? I think that this is a significant, substantial improvement over Part 1 of Season 11. This is a really strong box set from beginning to end, with 3 great stories. We're not talking like remakes of previous stories like The Deadly Assassin or like Philip Hinchcliffe remakes like we got with the Ravencliff Witch for Series 11 Part 1. We have stories that take much more original inspiration that we haven't really seen that much for the Fourth Doctor. The Dreams of Avarice seems way more like a Buck Rogers tale. When you've got a scene where the Fourth Doctor is flying into orbit with a police officer wearing rocket boots, you kind of think this is now uncharted territory for the Fourth Doctor. But the 9, as someone who hasn't listened to any box sets with the 11, it's kind of my first introduction to this character, and they are played quite spectacularly by John Heffernan, who's reprising his role. 9, as pointed out in the chat, has also been in a Doom Coalition story as well. This is not the 9's first appearance, but this is his first titular appearance. And he's encountering the Fourth Doctor, but the clip I'm going to play is early on in Part 1, and it's not the first scene we have for the 9, but it is such a great scene to establish his character and what he's like. I can only describe it as massive Tory energy. Let's play a clip from the 9.
Do you fancy a coffee? We have a new machine.
So I see.
Do you have a 2-credit coin?
No, but I bet you have.
I'm not putting one of mine in. They're mine. Why would I give one up just for a coffee?
It's your machine. You wouldn't be losing it. You can get it back out again afterwards.
But what if I can't? What if it gets stuck or something? How could I enjoy the coffee with all that stress?
It's 2 credits.
My 2 credits?
Oh. I've only got one.
Well, I only need one.
Well, what about me?
I'll let you know what it's like. Cappuccino or Flaxian blend, extra sugar, extra milk, extra chocolate on top, drinking temperature. Nothing else you can add? Sadly not. 5, I maxed on everything.
Of course you did.
Brilliant. No, that's not very nice.
Oh, I'll have it.
No, you won't. No, it's mine. I'll just put it somewhere safe, so I can look at it occasionally.
Unbelievable.
It's such a cool scene, just establishing this manic kleptomaniac who just impulsively just wants a load of stuff. But the Fourth Doctor is on his trail with a police officer, Detective Inspector Alan Probert, played by Richard Dixon, who becomes the companion surrogate for this story. This is a really fun romp. It's a 4-part story by Guy Adams, so you know you're in safe territory with Guy Adams, but this is really, really fun. The performances across the board are really strong, but once again, John Heffernan is an absolute hoot as the Nine. Tom Baker has such a weird energy in this box set, in a really good way, but I think Tom Baker is really rising to the material. He seems someone, like, he's constantly teetering on the edge of, like, full, like, vulnerability, and that it just seems like you have no idea what he's going to do next, and you also have no idea if he is just playing this up or if he really has kind of lost his mind sometimes. I don't know. He maybe is a bit socially repressed, because this takes place during that time in season 14 when post Sarah Jane, pre-Leela, he's traveling on his own, and he just really, really needs the company and the companions to restrain him. There's a really great Sarah Jane reference in Shell Shock, though. That was really, really lovely, that he's still missing Sarah Jane. But the Dreams of Avarice that leads this box set is really fun. The cliffhangers are killer. Like, I loved the cliffhangers to these stories and the stakes that the story goes in. Really interesting, a little bit off the wall techno babble, and you sense that it's almost going to, like, lose perspective of the whole story. Like, it's going to, like, lose the stakes. It's just going to go off the rails, and it's going to lose control, and it's going to lose me. But the Dreams of Avarice never did, thankfully. It was able to keep the immediate stakes of the story, whilst also really focused on character, the relationship between the Fourth Doctor and this police officer, and also the dynamic between the Nine, his other personalities, and also his henchmen. The Dreams of Avarice was a really, really strong story. Loved it from beginning to end. And it also makes a really great counterpoint to Shell Shock, which is by Simon Barnard and Paul Morris, where the TARDIS has landed behind enemy lines in World War I. It's behind German lines, and the Doctor wakes up in a German hospital. However, all of the soldiers there have been having nightmares, and this is just beyond Shell Shock. Something actually in the soil of the Somme is influencing the soldiers. It was a really nice story. Like, it's very different to Dreams of Avarice. Like, it's set on Earth. It seems like almost like full on drama, which also flirts with horror of the First World War in a really tasteful way. There's of course the allusions to war stories, like, you know, All Quiet on the Western Front, of course. Nicholas Briggs, who I'm sure might have had some say over this story. He is a co-director of the box set in general. So let's play a quick clip from Shell Shock, though. So this is a scene where the Fourth Doctor and the companion surrogate for this story, Hannah Schumann, who's a German nurse, played by Alicia Ambrose Bailey, have been captured by the British forces on the other side of No Man's Land. Here's a quick clip.
So let me get this straight. You do speak English?
Like a native.
I believe I can get by.
Evidently. Are all German nurses so highly trained?
My grandfather was born in London, Captain. I also speak a little Yiddish, if that helps.
I see. But you are a German national.
I am.
And you, sir, are...
Oh, you're not going to make me pick sides, are you?
Pick sides? Yes, old boy, I am. This isn't a five-a-side match, this is war.
Look, you found me in no man's land. That's neutral territory, surely.
No, it is not. I gather you claim not to be German.
Correct?
But you're not British.
Oh, can't we say I'm a citizen of the universe and leave it at that?
No, we can't. Nationality, if you would, please. Are you friendly?
Don't I look friendly?
Doctor, if you don't want to answer my questions, we can skip them altogether. I just don't think you'll like the alternative.
Well, you know what your trouble is, Captain? You're asking the wrong questions.
Oh, am I? And what questions should I be asking?
These tanks of yours, are they a new design?
You think I'm going to tell you that?
I think they are. I think you've only started trialling them very recently. In fact, I think that was their trial run today. Shall we take that silence as a yes?
Yeah, that's the vibe that Tom Baker gives throughout a lot of this box set. Almost like that, like pleading, like, oh, don't I look friendly? Like, oh, just loosen these handcuffs. Like, what can I do with one hand? Like, he seems to really be playing up that, like, almost like the old like old decrepit traveler, even though he's playing the younger Tom Baker in his 30s or 40s, however old he was during these stories as well. So if we went, okay, I ugly laughed at Don't I Look Friendly, if that made you ugly laugh, you will be laughing from almost beginning to end throughout the whole of the 9 box set, because that's the level Tom Baker's at throughout like 90% of the whole box set. It's a vibe, it's a choice, but I love it. But yeah, so Shell Shock is a really interesting story. We also have Finlay Robertson, who plays Lieutenant Hans Hoffman. Finlay Robinson, who you may remember from Blink. And you also have Christopher Naylor, who is the new voice of Harry Sullivan in the 4th Doctor and also the Big Finish box sets coming out now as well. He plays an assortment of soldiers in World War One in this story. So I can't say too much story-wise about Shell Shock, because there's a lot of twists and a lot of directions, and it's one of those things where if I describe what I love about it, I'll basically be giving away the vibes and the twists and the ultimate antagonist of the story, which is not my intent for these Big Finish reviews. What I can say is that with the exception of a bit of like some questionable sound effects, like when the 4th Doctor and Hannah are in the trenches, some of the footsteps like sound almost like Resident Evil PlayStation 1 like footstep sound effects, like surprisingly low quality stuff from like Big Finish in terms of the like sound effects. This is me like trying to find like needle in a haystack issues with the box set, I've got to confess, but that stood out to me though. The rest of the production though, like the music, the landscapes, the soundscapes of the landscape of No Man's Land, of Somme and everything, really top-notch stuff. I loved the performances across the board. Shell Shock, I don't know if it's my favourite of the box set, because Dreams of Avarice is like casting a massive shadow in terms of pure enjoyment. But in terms of the direction it goes in terms of like what the epitome of war is, and the actual conflict that we get in the last 2 episodes of Shell Shock, is some really profound directions. A lot to say about war. Placing the 4th Doctor in the First World War in particular was a really novel and interesting approach. And even though the 4th Doctor, Tom Baker, is playing up the comedy, there is still a real sense of pathos and seriousness behind it, where the 4th Doctor, like, he knows he can't stop World War One. He can stop what's happening in the trenches that's giving these German and British soldiers an extreme version of shell shock, but he can't stop the conflict. So all he can sort of do is just plead his case as best he can to the individuals around him about, like, you know, the German and British soldiers and French soldiers. There's really not that much that differentiates you lot. Like, you have way more in common than you do differences, and this war is futile, and the amount of like death and conflict that the Somme in particular has had over the centuries is really quite profound and profoundly sad. So, and Tom Baker meets the script on that level, even if he is being a fun cosmic bohemian. Shell Shock was really surprising. I really dug it a lot. And yeah, Shell Shock is like a surprise story. It's I don't know if it's my favourite, but I think it's the best of the box set. Shell Shock by Simon Band and Paul Morris was really, really good. Following Shell Shock, though, we have Peak Season by Lisbeth Miles. This is a really strange Series 11 finale, where the 4th Doctor meets Mervyn Peake. And Mervyn Peake, for those of you who don't know, was the illustrator for Alice in Wonderland and also did some work for J.R.R. Tolkien. Really well-renowned illustrator across like the early to mid-20th century. Even if you don't know him, you'll have seen his work 100%. Really iconic work, really iconic stuff. However, he was not the person who the 4th Doctor wanted to meet at the beginning of this adventure. Let's play a clip from Peak Season.
Are you trying to be funny, sir?
Oh, not at all, no. I'm a big admirer, you know. I've read all your books front to back and back to front twice.
Well, that's very kind of you, but...
And I do love the songs. You know, I know some people skip over them, but I prefer to sing them.
The songs?
Yes, Tom Bombadil's a delight, of course. But wizards are my favourite. Oh, I do like a good wizard.
Wizards? Who exactly do you think I am?
Well, John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, of course. Delighted to meet you at last.
I am not Tolkien.
Are you sure?
Perfectly.
Didn't we have a few ginger ales at the Eagle and Child? 1938, I think it was. Of course, I looked much older then.
No, we most certainly did not. If you wish to speak with Mr. Tolkien, I suggest you make your way to Charing Cross and purchase a one-way ticket to Oxford.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, who are you?
I most certainly do mind.
Now, please, don't watch. Oh, I recognize that face anywhere. Mervyn Peake! Oh, I'm a big admirer, you know. I've read all your books back to front.
And front to back.
Yes. How did you know?
That moment where the Fourth Doctor is genuinely lost for words. It's so funny. Anyway, so peak season starts with that encounter with the Fourth Doctor accidentally stumbling across Mervyn Peake, like breaking into his home and offering to make him a cup of tea because he thinks he's J.R.R. Tolkien. So as means of an apology, offers to take him on a trip in the TARDIS. They wind up in a laboratory, and then all of a sudden, the next thing we know, Mervyn Peake is putting on this crown that is wired up to all of this electronic gizmo stuff. And then we meet the Fourth Doctor and Mervyn Peake several months later, where they are now in a nameless society, in a nameless city, working as cartoonists for the local newspaper. Mervyn Peake is doing the cartoons for the newspaper, and the Fourth Doctor is doing the captions, is doing the typography. And it's basically all downhill from there in terms of cohesion within the story, because we're thrown into this almost like Power of Three style, where like, okay, so what is the Fourth Doctor and Mervyn Peake gonna do? They're living in like a shared accommodation together. They're roommates, they're buddies, and they don't know why they're here. They don't know how they got here, and they don't even know where they are. Like, it's a really fun setting and a really interesting way. Like, Mervyn Peake is like, how are we going to get out of here, Doctor? What are we going to do? You got to take me back home. I've got a life back home. You got to take me back. And the Fourth Doctor's like, yeah, let's just enjoy this for a bit. You know, we're not going anywhere. Let's enjoy doing the cartoons for the newspaper. There is conspiracy afoot in this nameless city, something more like akin to the Gunpowder Plot times 1,000. But it's just a really fun two-part story that's just a mystery box within the mystery box setting, where, like, yeah, it unfolds really well over the span of two episodes. Elizabeth Miles' dialogue just sparkles from beginning to end. Tom Baker carries it as well, but let's, of course, don't sleep on Mervyn Peake, who's played by David Holt, who does a great job. I'm not somebody who knows much about Mervyn Peake's life or his work outside of his illustrations, so if you are a big Mervyn Peake fan, you may find Easter eggs, you may find some references or some parallels to his real life or something. No idea. The story didn't really need it to be enjoyable. It's just a really fun two-part story. It's a strange finale for this season 11 for these box sets. I would have maybe put this between The Dreams of Avarice and Shell Shock, so, you know, you change the order of the box set somewhat. I also think it's a bit of a shame that this two-part story is not a standalone individual release. You have to get the box set for it. But like I hope I've communicated over the course of this review, this is a really strong box set with like several like top tier Fourth Doctor stories back to back to back, of varying tone, of varying scale, but not in varying quality. These are all like terrific stories. You get 10 episodes here, 3 stories, 2 4-parters and a 2-parter, 10 episodes, back to back bangers basically. Like I said, the peak season is just a really fun, inventive romp. It's not my favorite, but it's also, it doesn't have delusions of grandeur. It knows exactly what it's trying to be. It knows the scale of the story and the fun. I just think it's a bit strange that this is the finale, but Dreams of Avarice and Shell Shock are like the main attraction stories. That's why they're the standalone releases. Definitely, though, if you are interested in this, pick up the full box set. Don't get these individually because you're also missing out on peak season. Yeah, Shell Shock and Dreams of Avarice are both terrific stories, but you can get them both in this season 11 part 2 box set. I think it's great. We've got season 12, New Frontiers, coming out in March 2023, so we do have a bit of a break from Tom Baker for now. I don't think Tom Baker has, well, actually no, he's in the upcoming New Monsters Classic Doctors box set later on this month. Oh yeah, so even though he has some more adventures in terms of the proper series coming out early next year, you've got Dalek's Genesis of Terror coming out at the beginning of next year, is it? Yeah, March 2023, where it's basically a remake of Genesis of the Daleks for some reason. That reminds me, though, Shell Shock also structurally had quite a lot in common with Genesis of the Daleks, where it's a lot of like back and forth between these two opposing sides. I think it's a coincidence. It just means that the story is able to keep moving and we see both sides of the conflict, but that was the parallel that I got. So yeah, this was really, really good. I was surprised after Series 11 Part 1, Solo kind of let me down a bit, but the 9 is the real deal. Top tier 4th Doctor stuff. 3 great stories. Check them all out. I really, I give it a solid out of 10, a 9. Predictable joke.